Are you ready to learn from a calm and clarity coach? This is Scale You, your weekly guide to growing your business like crazy. Each week, we have amazing guests coming in, talking about how to grow your business, how to use automations or AI to help future-proof your solopreneur journey. On Scale You, we take you from solopreneur to an unstoppable business owner. So let us stop the grind. Let us actually scale you. Now, our guest today is the amazing Dan McPherson, who is a calm and clarity coach, the CEO of Leaders Must Lead, and the creator of the Strategic Momentum Coaching, the Dreams Are Real podcast, and the Together We Rise Patreon. After spending 25 plus years in the corporate world, leading teams up to 2,000 people, and being responsible for over 150 million in revenue, Dan has spent the last 8 years helping entrepreneurs and creatives around the world build true momentum in their lives and business. So guys, please help me welcome our guest for today on the Scale You podcast, the amazing Dan McPherson. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Leanne. I am so happy to be here.
You were literally one of the first, I think, when Honey and I, my assistant, created our list of those would be our first top 10 guests on the Scale You podcast. You were literally, I think, number 1 or 2 at least. I think Garrett was on there just because Garrett and I were talking about something else. And then it was you because you have been my friend in the last 5 years since April now, right? Yeah, March, April, when we met in 2019. And I was a fledgling 23-year-old. And it's been a fun, essentially half a decade of getting to know you. But in this podcast, everyone else can get to know you as well and your amazing soul. And essentially, we can start there. Tell us about your highlights of your life, how you got where you are. Your top 3 to 5 or even 10 highlights.
Well, I don't know that we'll go into 10. First, I'll say thank you so much for all the kind words. You, as I say to you privately frequently, you are one of my very favorite people on the planet. And I just have so much love for you and so much appreciation and respect for what you're doing. And I'm really excited for the new podcast and honored to be able to be here, much less to be near the top of the list of early people. That's great. So for me, I guess my life has been a series of these inflection points. And I use the term inflection point very specifically. I think most of us in our life have between 5 and 7 of them by the time that we pass away. And many of them we don't recognize until we look back.
Yep.
A couple of them you can recognize looking forward. And so for me, the things that brought me to where we are, the things that are those big inflection points in my life. Now, lots of other stuff has happened. I could probably give you a couple hundred things, but those inflection points, I look at the very first one is a heavy one. There's some light ones, there's some heavy ones. And the very first one is a heavy one. It's when I was 16 and it was my first suicide attempt. And I had gotten to that space, as so many young people do, unfortunately. I think that's the biggest pandemic in the world. Yeah. But so many people get to that space, and I got there in a somewhat similar way. I grew up hidden from my father for 6 years, and maybe that isn't similar, but struggles with family is, right? I then lived with my mother in poverty for years, and she even sold herself so that we could have rent, and dealt with all that. And when she remarried my new family, there was violence and drugs and all sorts of different things involved. And it's not to say that I had this horrific childhood, but there was a lot of challenge. And by the time I got to where I was 16, I'd lost hope. I felt like that what I did didn't matter. I felt like what I said didn't matter, that nobody would hear me, that dreams weren't real, which is kind of the opposite of what I believe now. And coming out of that, I can now identify, I had these great understandings, except that I couldn't have put them into words. But I started to understand one of the most important things for me in life, which is that we have agency. I came to see that while our environment, the people that we're around, the places that we are, while that has influence, and it had certainly influenced me, that it's our choices that create change. And so I was like, wait a minute, I don't have to do what everyone else told me. I don't have to be what everyone else said I could or couldn't be, that I can make those choices. Now, it took me like 25 years to sort that out and figure out what I could do with that. But I started to understand. I also started the very, very beginnings of understanding that I was meant to help a lot of people, that I was meant to do something that mattered, to have a purpose. And again, 20 plus years later before I really figured that out. So that's one of the I would claim that as really the earliest true inflection point in my life. Now, one of the later inflection points in my life, it involves you. And it isn't just you. I mean, I'd love to be like, oh, it was just you. And you certainly are an important part of it. But it was where we met, right? It was me going to Asia and being part of this speaking tour and Freedom Summit Global. And I'm so grateful for Ricky and for everybody who put that all together and what got created out of that and the camaraderie and the connections that came from it. That was one, I would say, the reason I give that as an example is because it's one that I could see ahead of time. When the decision came up, I looked and I said, this is going to change my life if I say yes. I still had to take an action. I still had to make a choice. I had to make a scary decision because I didn't have the money to go. I had to take 45 days out of my business. I had to do all of those things, but I knew that it would change my life. And I would say, if I were to pick a couple of others, and we can talk about whatever you'd like, but I look at my mother's passing as one of the inflection points in my life, and it really began to shape it. My second suicide attempt, and final, by the way, suicide attempt 14 years ago. Or I look also at the year, and it's generally it's a point, right? It's a point in time, it's a moment. But I also look, I would say, at the year that I had 4 heart attacks in a row.
Yeah.
And those things, and I had to reshape everything. So it's all those moments where my life spun completely and I had to choose a direction and go on a path.
Well, I've heard a lot of this already because I've known you for that long. It still makes my heart very, very heavy. But it is like I've told you this also before, of like, I am happy that you were one of the people we connected with during that whole whirlwind basically of speaking tours. And what I've learned from you as a coach has been like insurmountable. Like I and you might talk about this in a little bit, but for those who are listening or those who are watching, one of most memorable things that Dan taught during that whole speech reel was naming essentially that negative voice in your head. And I still do that until this day. Jelly is still in my head. Like whenever it's getting too mean, it's getting too bad. Yeah, there you go. For those who are listening, Dan just held up one of the bears stuffed toys that yep. So it's separate from you. So I wanted to tell you that because that has been such a big value in my life for someone who does have a lot of negative voices in her head. And I've taught that to other people as well. Like whenever I catch my friends of like, is it really you talking or the negative voice in your head talking? So I wanted to tell you that because then you surviving thus far and getting to this point, you have impacted me. You've impacted people that I've taught that one small thread basically. And I'm grateful that you're here. So speaking of that then, how did you get into coaching people, to working with people in the way that you do? I know you have a pretty big career background as well, but like how did it actually stumble into where you are now?
Yeah, it's really been an interesting journey because in some ways I would never have predicted that that's where I would end up. And in some ways I realized I was pretty ignorant not to have predicted that. As you alluded to, I spent 25 years in the corporate world and I did sales and became really, really, really good at sales. And then I went into leadership and I decided I wanted to study leadership. So of course, what do I pick but retail? That must be where all the biggest leaders are. Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody can really figure out how I made that connection, but that's the connection I made. And so I went to this place where I was just driven, and I was in leadership, and I was like, I'm going to be the best leader I can be. I'm going to learn as much about it as I can. And over time, I ended up leading bigger and bigger teams, and I made lots of mistakes. One of the best lessons I can give you: don't be a Dan. I did it all wrong, so you don't have to, right? Like I made all those mistakes so that now I can give the consolidated wisdom of here's how to short circuit that. But what happened was I would take a new job, and I would get really, really good at it. I would be driven. I'd learn. I'd pour myself into it. I'd be helping people. And then I would find out I was dissatisfied. I would just get this discontent and almost resentment. And I would then change jobs a year and a half later. And I couldn't figure out why that pattern was occurring. Now the questions I ask anybody when they're struggling, when they're facing stress, to ask themselves 3 questions. And the first of those 3 questions is, what am I meant to understand from this situation? And that's generally when you're seeing a cycle or a pattern that you've identified. You say, what am I meant to understand from this? As a side note, it's almost never the obvious thing. It's almost exclusively levels down. The obvious thing you already had. You're just like, oh yeah, that's what that means. No, don't blow it off. Ask yourself, what is the thing I'm really meant to learn from this, to pull from this, and so that I don't lose the thread later. The second question is, does this serve me? And the third question is, who am I becoming? We can dive into that later if you like, but those 3 questions are so important. And I finally got to a spot where, not in as buttoned up of a way, but I was asking that question: why am I so unsatisfied? Why am I not where I want to be? Why am I not happy? I got to where I was making a ridiculous amount of money. I was leading thousands of people. I was managing hundreds of millions in business, and successful by everyone else's terms. I say everyone else's because I didn't have a definition of success that matched that fit that. And it came to me through a series of events that it's the small things in our life that change our life, right? The very smallest events, those inflection points. Here's the other one, the one I didn't call out earlier. I was in martial arts with my kid. I was one night just leaving our martial arts class. So my kid and I did Taekwondo for 10 years. We did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a couple of years. And we were leaving one night. And one of the teachers that I respect the most, Master Terry, he came up to us and he said, hey, there's this podcast I think you should listen to. And I'd never heard of a podcast before. I didn't even know what that was. So we know this was a while ago. And I went home and started listening to it. And it, just for reference, it was the Tim Ferriss podcast. But I started listening to it, and it started connecting with me, and it fed into me. And I realized I hadn't been feeding into me. I hadn't been doing any real personal growth. And what I started learning as I started feeding into myself and making it to where I wasn't empty and I wasn't filling from an empty cup anymore, that I was able to make a difference. I was able to help people in a significant way only if I was feeding into myself. Well, then I said, well, now what am I meant to do? And I started actually asking those questions. And then when they flew in and offered me my 3rd promotion in 5 years to be this really senior person in a $1 billion company, I literally sat back, took a breath because it was a little scary, looked at them, said, what would it look like if I declined? And I walked away from hundreds of thousands a year to go to 0 with no other money in the house, and said, I need to go and help people in the way I'm meant to help people. And that's when I realized I had no idea what that meant.
It's usually the grander,
Right. I was like, wait a minute. I did the thing and I know I'm supposed to help people, but I've never built a business from 0. Now I've helped people build lots of businesses from 0, and I've built mine a couple times. But I did that, and then I was able to start asking more questions. Who am I meant to help? Why am I meant to help? What is it? What does this mean? Oh, by the way, how do I help them? What does that make? And the reason I say it should have been obvious is that before that, everybody that worked for me was getting promoted. People that worked for me would come to me and say, Dan, everything that you're teaching me helps me in my life, not just my business. Dan, you really should share this to more and more people. And I never connected that because I was teaching leaders of leaders, even hundreds and thousands of them, that, oh, wait, maybe I should coach. So that in the end is how I got into the beginning of coaching.
Got it. Well, it's such an interesting story, and I love and I walked away and did the grand exit, and I didn't know what to do afterwards. It's because it really is a common thing when it comes to people who who want to start a business of like, oh, I'm gonna do this XYZ because I saw a friend do it and I'm gonna succeed at it, and then it's like the informed pessimism basically of the drop of like, oh, I don't know what I don't know right now, and it's a little bit scary and we have no idea what to do. So with that then, and like from then on, like I said, I met you at that point of your life and you were like debating about should I go all the way 24-hour flight basically to Asia to do this
Right.
thing, and then jumping from there, and like you've met us, you went even further on than us, you went to Bali and Thailand and like taught people there. Since then, what has been kind of a, as you've kind of created a lot of the love that you put into the world, you've built a lot of leaders into the world, what's the value that you're trying to create? Like, what is the thing that's like asking this in employee interview questions actually, of like, if you had all the resources in the world, what value do you want to create in the world?
Well, what I would say is this: my ultimate goal, my North Star, if you will, is to inspire true generational change. And true generational change worldwide that reduces human trafficking, hunger, poverty, racism, all of that. And that sounds super grandiose, and it is. It's massive. Thankfully, I don't have to do it. Part of my job is to inspire it. But then you start asking the questions, and I believe curiosity is the number one skill in the world, to ask more and better questions. I was terrible at that earlier in life. I'm working every day to become better at it. I'm like maybe a 6 now. I'm working my way up. But if you ask, well, how do you inspire generational change? What you find is that if you help enough people to actually accomplish their goals, or to put in the phrase I would use it, to legitimately achieve their dreams, that the generational change will naturally occur. And okay, that's great. That's wonderful. And so I would say that the pithy answer to your question is to help 982,000 people of specific groups, particularly women, creatives, small business owners in various ways, to actually achieve their dreams. But then the question comes, well, how do you do that? And I've said it in lots of different ways, but the most isolated way I can say it is this: that to achieve our dreams, we need to achieve true momentum. That you're not, you may jump towards your dream, right? Like one of the old jumping beans, you might jump towards your dream, but to actually get there, and to actually be able to reverse engineer it and say, this is the vision, this is the strategy, this is the tactic, this is the task, you've got to be able to understand the formula for building momentum. And what I do primarily, and the reason I'm labeled a calm and clarity coach now, is that I help people understand and actually work through and repeat the formula for true momentum, which is very simple. Well, I'll say it is simple, but not easy. It's calm, clarity, and focus, in that order. Calm comes first. So a lot of people talk about clarity. A lot of people talk about focus. I don't know that they talk about it well. I don't know that they talk about it effectively, but they talk about it. Very few people talk about the first step, which is that to make everything else easier, to make everything else fall into line, you got to be able to get to a space of peace and a space of calm, and that we have to repeat this, right? Calm, clarity, focus is what leads to momentum. Calm, clarity, focus is what keeps momentum. So that is the value that I add, that will then allow people to achieve their dreams, which will then inspire true generational change and will actually change the world and society that we live in.
I've always loved that, and then of course I love that it's an illiterate. The first two words. We've actually, inside of 2x, we've quoted you multiple times on that very same thing of, talking to AJ, a client success manager, he always quotes that of like, whenever things are too chaotic, I'm like, okay, what's our calm? Like Dan will always say, what's our calm? I'm like, so that's the value that you are creating. The people are now quoting you. People are now remembering what it is. That's awesome. And I remember when I started coaching with you, I think that was 2022, 2 years ago, officially, basically, because as your friend, I have certain questions I could ask you without having to be officially one of the people you work with. But about 2 years ago, I remember I was such in a messed up space. basically, when I started working with you. And I was, I had the anxiety, I had the panic disorder, all of these list of things that I used to have, which therapy helps. Uh,
Yes, it
that's the
does.
But then with you, like just the keeping in mind of, okay, what can bring me calm right now? So what's the clarity so I can focus on it? So then I can jumpstart on that momentum. That kind of has always stayed with me. Plus, it's alliterative, so it's easy for me to remember. But that is, I see that value that you're creating in the world, basically. Just because I see it. I'm one of the people who live the things that you are teaching, and I love talking about it to other people as well. As that's why I wanted you to be one of the first
That
couple of
brings
guests on the podcast.
Oh, that brings me so much joy. It truly does. And to have seen you just light up and move forward and do all the amazing things you're doing in the world, any part of that I've been able to play and supplement, I'm honored by, for sure. And I will say this too, that for me, I can say it really blithely now, like really easy: calm, clarity, focus, momentum. That's simple,
Mm,
don't you see it? Right? But I will also say that my number one gift in the world is synthesis, to be able to take pieces from 100 things and
mhm.
to refine them and refine them and refine them. And that little simple equation that I've not found any violation of yet, that I believe that's effectively
So
one of the
far.
laws of the universe, right? Like that's
Mhm.
the thing, that it took me years to get it that clean. But and so I think part of the reason that it resonates, part of the reason it sticks with those that I share it with now, is that it's real, that it's refined, that people hear it and go, oh, that makes sense. I may not have put it in those words before, but when you say it that way, it makes sense. And I
Mhm.
and I think that that's a really good tip for those who are running their businesses and scaling their businesses: is what is the thing that you refine well enough that when you say it, people go, that's right, to quote one of my favorite books, Never Split the
Mhm.
Difference. But when you get the that's right, like it's there, it's sinking in. And I love that that's been true for you and for so many others. Frankly, I wish I'd been able to say it that way a lot of years earlier. I probably would have had a very different
You had to
journey.
learn
But
it. You had to refine it, as you said, to get to it, and now you have. And it is the thing that you were, like I said, most memorable of. I mean, you even told me like, oh yeah, someone labeled me the other day the common clarity coach. I'm like, yeah, that's you. That's Didn't even know that that was a label that wasn't on your repertoire before the case. Just because you are that kind of person. So um with that, then, if we had to get you a second brain, third, let's say there's an army of Dans in the world, what would you be
that's
doing? Like,
terrifying and exciting all at once, by the way.
right? A lot of people who are amazing huggers. What would be, what would be something that you would be doing with that an army of Dans?
Well, for me, when I think of replication, right, that's a lot of what we try to do in the world, is not so much to replicate ourselves, but to expand our impact, to fulfill the purpose that we are meant to. And for that, I need those second, third, 50th, 100th brains. And that's one of the reasons I love what you do with 2XU, is that you provide the conduit for that. And I think when we start thinking, how do I expand, how do we expand our impact, looking and saying, what are the steps in order, the strategy. I'm a strategist at heart, and that's why I like what you do, because I think what you do is one of the most crucial pieces of strategy in that. What would I look for? Well, I first I look and say, what am I bad at? Right? What am I not good? So it's not that I want to replicate me, it's that I want to replicate
The
the
good.
core of, I want to replicate the core values.
Mm,
I want to replicate the understanding and the desire and the direction. But I want different experiences and different skills and different understandings, so that we can have challenging dialogue and crucial conversations and all of that. So for me, it's pretty simple. I may
mm,
understand marketing pretty well, but I'm horrifically bad at it. So that's
mm,
like the first thing, like somebody to do that. The second, and this is something that has been more and more true since my heart attacks and since my physical capacity has changed, is someone, but it was always true, and that is someone to get what I would call the drudgery or the operational stuff off my plate. Like any of the operational stuff that can be taken off of my plate would be great. But partnered with that, with those things being taken off, is that I want somebody to go back and forth with. I want somebody who thinks, who engages, who has different opinions, different thoughts, different experiences, so that we can fulfill one of the truths that I know in the universe, which is that we are always stronger as a team than we are as individuals. And earlier in my career, I would have told you, I'm the team leader, I direct, here's where we go. Now I realize that that's largely BS. I mean, yes, I need to have knowledge, I need to hear the things and be able to assess it and evaluate it and make final calls, sure, but my team is better than I am. And I want to hire people and bring people and partner with people who I know are better than me. That doesn't scare me, that excites me. So that's where the second brains go, is that it's an amplification of impact, a filling of gaps, and a sharpening of each other.
I love that. The whenever you say sharpening an axe, the image always is, if you had 24 hours, probably butchering this, but like you had 12 hours to cut down a forest, spend the first 10 sharpening your axe, and then the last 2 kind of going through it. And it's true for a lot of people. Sometimes you do have to just swing the axe because you have no idea how sharp it is.
Right.
And then a lot of the times, once you gain that perspective, like, oh, it's this sharp. Okay, then I want to learn how to do it, and then start cutting down the forest. So it is a refining and getting better. And I love the reflection of, I know these are my weaknesses. I want someone else to take care of it, so I can just focus on the thing that I want to do, which is what we do in 2XU anyway. So as to kind of grab the essence of Dan, what do you think makes you you? Like, if you had a superpower, what would you name that superpower?
Well, typically, if I claim strengths, so I'm going to give you 2 answers to this. The first is, if I name my strengths, the first one I mentioned earlier is synthesis. It took me a while to recognize it, but I now know that if I am exposed to something and I see 100 different versions of it, that I can grab a piece, no matter how good they are, I can grab a piece from each. I can then combine them, refine them into something that is better than any of the individuals. And the partnered strength with that is that I have an ability then to turn around and teach it in a way that connects with people and that allows them to take action that gets them closer to the dreams, but that in an understandable way it goes to them from that refinement. And generally, my third strength I claim is resilience, but that's probably a separate part of the story. But that first part, that ability to consume an incredible amount of information, refine it in a way that wouldn't be obvious to almost anybody, make something better than any of it, and then turn around and be able to give that to someone else in a consolidated form that connects with them, that to me is probably my greatest strength. But if you ask me what the essence of me is, I would point to my core values. And I would say that I've refined my core values and key principles extensively. It's when I teach people how to go from their North Star, figuring out what their vision is, all the way to their personal resonance, that spot where their definition of success changes and things begin to flow to them rather than them having to fight through every inch. But to get to that space, one of the things we talk about is, what are your core values and key principles? And for me, my number one core value, and you know this because you've heard me say it hundreds of times, it's people matter most and relationships are everything. And excuse me, if I could be known for any one thing, as much as I'd love it to be all these other things, that's great. But the one thing that I would want to be known for is that I live for that people matter most and relationships are everything. That isn't blind faith. It is a deep understanding. It isn't something taken lightly. It is what I live by. It is my singular and first filter. Now, my second filter that goes with that, and I won't go too deep into the core values, but my second is always do what's right, even if it's inconvenient. And I've literally made more than a dozen actual life and death decisions based upon that. Yeah. And I would say that if you can say that if you can look at me and say, Dan is about people and relationships, he truly cares and he shows up in that way. And I'm not perfect by any means in that area, but you can say that's how Dan shows up, and that Dan will always do everything in his power to do what's right. Then I can stand here and say, I am happy with the man that I'm becoming.
That's amazing. That's really cool. And that's and I love the people matter first always, because like for me, I'm very much, as someone who's cared for other people my whole life, that's kind of my default as well, which is a lot of the reasons why we got along so well in the first 24 hours that we met. We kind of just clicked very easily in that way, because we share that core value. And in a lot of the ways that you teach other people, and the courses that you've put out, and all of the talks that you've done, that resonates a lot with people, because we do forget that we start anything in life, we start because we're trying to do it for someone, and we usually lose sight of that, whatever that is. But you kind of bringing in back that reminder of like, oh yeah, I don't have to do this all by myself, because I didn't have to, like, I wanted this to be something else. And for me, I love that reminder for myself every once in a while, and I remember you. So for the rest of the people who are listening or who are watching, how can they find out more about you, Dan? Where can they find you? And is there anything exciting that you would like to talk about as well?
Oh, sure. Always. For one, I would love to connect with anyone that is hearing this, and I would love to learn your story, to learn about your world and what is going on in your space. I'm endlessly curious. I love people's stories. If you're looking for me, you'll find me on YouTube and TikTok under Leaders Must Lead. You'll find me on Facebook under my name, Dan McPherson. I encourage you to look there and connect in those places and say, hey, I heard you on the podcast. And then let's message back and forth. I'm glad to set up a time to chat. I have done now more than 1,400 intro calls to meet people and hear their stories, and I would love to do that. If you're like, whoa, that feels like too much, no worries, just follow and see some cool stuff. What am I excited about right now? There's a lot of things that I carry a lot of excitement, right? Like, that's just my nature. But the thing that I am really excited about is something that I was sure I would be, but I wasn't sure, like so many things that we try, we don't know what's sustainable, right? Is about a year ago, I started a group called Strategic Momentum Coaching. And the whole purpose of it was to say, there are a lot of people out there who want help and they want access to a high level coach, but they just don't have the kind of money that like one-on-one would cost, the thousands a month and all that. And so I created an incredibly affordable group, and I decided we'll test this. We'll go see how it goes. It's really inexpensive 3-month memberships. And I show up 6 days a week for an hour at a time. People come, they can ask any questions that they want about life, about business, about whatever barriers they're facing. And as it turns out, people are really excited about that, and it's caught on, and it's allowed me to serve people that I otherwise may not have been able to. It's allowed some of my one-on-one clients to add fuel to the fire, but it's really been for a lot of small business owners who are starting or who are early, and to be able to help them has meant the world to me. So I'm super excited about that. And of course it's called Strategic Momentum because calm, clarity, and focus is the only path to true momentum. So that's what we're there to try and help. And so I'm very excited about that.
That's perfect. And as I've kind of said throughout this whole podcast, as someone who has gone ahead and had a few employees kind of join that and get a lot of value from it, and now quoting back into my company, even the things that you've taught them, I can be, of course, your bright and loud testimonial that it is an amazing opportunity for people who just want to get started, who aren't sure where to get help, find help, who thinks that they have to save up like $5,000 a month to be able to get a coach. Dan has made it easier for you. So thank you so much, Dan, for being on the podcast. I've learned a few things from you that I didn't know before, and we've kind of rehashed a lot of things that I love about you, and you've kind of made it stronger for everyone else to hear. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this journey you're on and to watch it continue to skyrocket in growth. You are amazing and incredible. And thank you to everybody who's listening too. I'm honored. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. If you guys, of course, would like to know more about Dan, I will put all of his links in the description below if you guys want to check that out. Again, can sing always high praises about Dan. He's been my friend for that long, and not just a friend, he's also been my coach personally as well in a lot of things in my life. So if you guys want to check him out, feel free to do so. And of course, if you guys liked and enjoyed this video, make sure to share it with other people, hit like if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're watching this on YouTube as well, comment below your favorite parts or golden nuggets of wisdom basically that you've heard from Dan that you're going to repeat and talk to other people about. And if you haven't yet, wherever you are listening or watching, make sure to hit the subscribe button for the weekly Scale You podcast episodes. And as always, I hope you guys have an amazing day. And remember that small steps matters. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!